Hello and welcome back to the port. I'm the Galloping Major.
And I'm Eggy Harris, and today we're looking at the Russian battleship commanders, and we're going to start with Nikolai von Essen.
The reason why we're starting with Nikolai von Essen is he's the free commander that everyone gets access to at the start of the game. So if you haven't got many commanders, this could be where you start looking. But we're going to review all the battleship commanders that you have available to you for the Russians. Do you want to lead?
Yeah, I can do. So Nikolai von Essen gives you a base trait of nooks and crannies, which increases the minimum ricochet angle of your ship's AP shells. So that means that if you're going to get a penetration with AP, then you can do it at a larger angle from complete broadside. So it's good. It's a good trait. You might even want to use him as inspiration if you were going to build him up, but nothing too terrible there. And
Yeah. How high is that
take
ability going to go?
well, I haven't got him at a high level, but it says 1.6 degrees at rank 7.
Hmm.
I don't know how much further that goes up unless you fancy ranking him up now.
1.4 at 7, so 2.8 at 14. So maybe about.
It'd
Sorry,
probably go up to like 5 degrees, maybe.
I don't think it would go up that high. It looks like, was it 0.2 per level? There's 20 levels, so that'd be 4 degrees.
4, yeah, 4 degrees. It's not a massive buff, but it could be very useful if
Yeah,
you're
it
going to be
basically means that the
shooting.
auto ricochet angle when shooting against a broadside target would go from plus or minus 45 degrees from the broadside to plus or minus 49 degrees for, say, like the Russians. Amusingly, though, this could be good on, like, say, the American high tier cruisers or the British cruisers, where that would take it from plus or minus 60 degrees to plus or minus 64 degrees.
Mm. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily say it has to be inspiring battleship commanders. You could use it on cruisers if you wanted to.
Hmm. Sorry for the random sidetrack there. I was
Ah,
just a
sorry.
random thought. Yeah. Um,
So, should we take a look at his traits?
yeah.
So,
So looking at his first level trait, your options is contact is imminent, which is increased torpedo speed, which is useless to you. So that basically leaves you down to the other two options, which is barely out of peril, which gives plus 6%. Or it goes up to plus 80% damage dealt and minus 40% damage taken when ramming. Your other option is burn it down, and once that's fully upgraded, that will give you plus 2% fire chance. So I
yeah.
don't think I don't think either of them shine.
No, I mean, if you're someone that wants to go for the by other means and get the Die Hard medal often by ramming and surviving, then Barely Out of Peril could be your choice. And that's the same on a lot of other battleship commanders that you can use. So if ramming's your thing, then you go for that. If you want to go for just a general buff, go for the Burn It Down XXL. But we're not judging either way. It's really up
Yeah,
to you.
no, but they both seem quite situational, aren't they?
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
either really. Second ability, I think this kind of shows the difference in our play styles. But so I've gone for Look at Me Now, which reduces your seed detectability range.
yeah. I've gone for Crisscross, which just buffs your traverse speed by zero point 0.6. It may even get further. I haven't ranked them up, so maybe a lot more. Um, the other option would be Before It's Too Late, which increases detectability of torpedoes. And either one of these three, again, are quite good, but it comes down to preference. So the Major's gone for Look at Me Now because he believes more in concealment than I do. I personally don't see battleships as being anything. I don't believe you should really care about a battleship's concealment because I spend most of my games in battleships being spotted, so I'm not too worried about it. But
Yeah,
it comes down.
I find it quite. It's because of my playstyle in the British, which is then carried over into the other nations. I usually play at distance against enemy battleships, and then therefore that means that I can because my concealment's usually less, obviously ignoring destroyers and cruisers, because so say like later game or like maybe very early game, sometimes I find this can be quite useful, because what you can do is move in and get them like within your gun range and still not be spotted, and then start to make your turn, get all your guns fired. So now you've basically got yourself in a position where you've got all your guns on target, and then from there you're then in a decent position to start kiting away. Because the worst thing I find, I like to kite away, so I don't like going nose in unless I've got like a nice isolated target. So by having this reduced concealment, I can see them before they can see me. That then gives me time to get into a position that I find favourable, to then make the engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but the trouble I find is that whenever you have any plans of concealing your battleship, you then just get a destroyer at 5 kilometers away that you can't see, that then just ruins everything.
Yeah, it's
That's
just the thing is,
the
it's like
trouble.
my like take my KG5. I've got a concealment down to like 12.5 kilometers, which means I'm almost on par with some of the heavy cruisers.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to think about if you really want to. If you really go down the road of
Mm.
concealment, then you can make a difference.
Yeah, it's a playstyle thing, so it's down to what you do. I mean, I think like you were saying, like any of these is a playstyle thing. So for me, concealment, I find it critical, whereas you don't. So you're probably going for crisscross because you want to be able to get your guns switching from side to side to get on target. But then someone else might decide maybe go for before it's too late. Maybe they like to brawl and push in, and they want to see those torpedoes and be able to react to them. So I
Yeah,
think you can make a case for all of them there, really, isn't it?
yeah, pretty much, just down to preference. So looking at the third trait, back in stock's useless.
Hmm.
Collective labour gives you an extra consumable, a damage control charge, and also gives a small buff to the duration. The Belarus gives an increase to the maximum speed of the ship. So I think we've both agreed we've gone for collective labour here because of the Russian battleships having a limited damage control.
Mm.
So it's you only get three as standard, and three is okay. Four is what we found to be optimal, and you can if you're using von Essen, you'll see later on you can get fully packed, so you can have five. Um, but it's basically the best thing to do in our opinion because of the limited number. So you might we found that four is good enough that you don't really have to worry about it. So go for collective labour.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
yeah,
I do highly recommend collective labour on the Russian battleships, just because that limited number having another one. I mean, here you can even possibly get another two. That's It means you don't have to be so conservative with them. You're not too afraid of spending one when you, because there's a thing. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you've got one fire, but you're no longer in an engagement and you know it's safe. So no, normally you just go, oh bugger it, I'll just use damage comp. With the Russians, you're like, oh, but I really want to save that for when I've got two fires or something. So maybe I'll just burn for 30 more seconds or whatever it is.
yeah, yeah. You end up sort of tying yourself up with something that you could have just got rid of, and then you
Yeah,
end up taking more damage than you should have. So
yeah, you start
it's
because you've got a limited number of it. You start to like overthink it.
mm, yeah, it's best to get as many of them as you can, even though they are still limited.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
But
that's agreed. Belarus could be interesting, but I definitely think collective labour is a choice there. Going to the fourth level, smoke in the water is useless. Reaching out, increased range of main guns. I think we both agreed that's our preference.
yeah,
I see justification go steer clear. If you're again, I think if you're going for that kind of like you want to be maybe a brawler, maybe I could see someone going like straight down the right side of this. You know, like getting the speed, the steering, the rudder, uh, yeah, the rudder, the torpedoes, visibility and stuff. That could be quite an interesting build if you're that
well,
kind of
maybe
brawler
even
build.
maybe even the barely out of peril if they are like the ramming
Mm,
damage if they are brawler
yeah,
because they could end up getting close quarters and ramming someone.
just make it make a battleship into a ram.
Yeah, yeah, we've talked about this before, haven't we? Like we've joked about how you build a battleship into a ramming machine. Um, you'd need the obviously barely out of peril and
and the Belarus, and then probably do an inspiration with someone who does speed, and then Bruce Fraser, and just see how fast you can make it, and just charge in there. I'd be quite an
See how many,
interesting German build, actually, wouldn't it?
yeah, it could be. See how many ships you could ram in one game. There must be a world record somewhere.
Going on to the legendary ability, what we got? We got unstoppable, so keep your engines going and reduce the time that they need to repair.
Useless.
Will to
Useless.
rebuild, improve the amount of HP that you recover. But it makes sense because you have repair parties, but you don't.
Consumables.
Problem with the Russians, you don't have many repair parties, and I think that's why we say go fully packed.
Yeah, I definitely would. If I was going for von Essen, I would have the fully backed and the collective labour to go for the 5 repair
Mm.
parties.
Yeah, no, I think we're mostly in agreement with von Essen, but obviously he's not going to be the key commander. So one of the Russian battleship commanders is Lev Galler. Now his base ability, or like his base ability slash what he can inspire others with, is battleship main gun HE shell damage. Basically improving how much damage you get out of your HE guns, but for battleships only. Um, don't think it's a standout ability. It could be an interesting inspiration for someone who plays like a HE thrower battleship. I mean, the Russians
Yeah.
can be quite good at that as well.
Maybe like a King George or a Nelson inspiration somewhere would be good because
Yeah,
I mean I in my King George I normally stay in HE unless I really find a situation where AP is preferable. But you, yeah, it's worth it if you wanted a HE battleship. Sorry, but it's not massively exciting. Um,
that's fair enough.
so looking at the traits, not the one for nuisance, so that just reduces your flyer and flooding risk. Flammable cannoneer, and I think that's a bit of a Marmite trait, really. I've never been a fan of increasing my chance of catching fire,
No.
but if you really wanted to get the small buffs that you gain from the range and the precision of your main battery, then fair enough. But if especially in Russian battleships, like we've said before, you have a limited number of damage cons. You don't want to increase the chance of catching fire because then you have more opportunity to waste your limited number of damage cons. So we would probably agree on not the one for nuisance.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree on not one for nuisance there. Really, I think increasing the gun stuff for the risk of catching fire, it's an interesting play style. I'd probably recommend that for someone who plays at maximum range, like just touching distance. The problem is when you're at just touching distance, you're probably angled, and when you're angled, people fire HE at you, and so you will just always be catching fire. And like you're saying, you've got limited damage cons, so not one for nuisance, reducing that risks. That's probably a good thing to do, especially considering the limited number. For your second ability, I think we both disagree. Well, we're both going for different options here, but they both do, in general, they do the same thing. So crisscross improves the traverse speed of your main battery guns. Gyrating drill Brits. Ugh, I still want to keep calling it gyrating giblets. Um, what that does, that improves your turret traverse speed, but it does it slightly better than crisscross. But it also adds the increased AP shell damage, but that's countered by reducing your battleship speed. Now, it's it's a bit of a
I think
swings and roundabouts.
I think if you would if you were in a toss up between the two of these and you didn't know which one to go for, it would take some practice with both and some like consideration. I
Mm,
think I'd have to go out with crisscross and then go out with gyrating drill bits, and because I would rather have gyrating drill bits as long as the reduction in speed doesn't annoy me. So I'd have to find
yeah,
out on a ship to ship basis. I'd have to find out whether that would annoy me or not.
I think like you're saying, it's one of those where you might end up having to like play a bit of both and see how it feels. Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
agree with that. It's a bit of a playstyle thing. It's basically how do you get on with it, which is quite nice.
yeah. So the third ability, you've got volunteer, which I'm just going to brush off as being a terrible choice when you've got collective labour. So
Yeah, no, I
you
agreed.
could have, yeah, you could have volunteer, which is just basically terrible. You've got marksmanship, which I don't know, doesn't really do much, and then you've got the collective labour, which increases your damage gun. And I don't know how many times we're going to have to say it. You've got a limited number,
Yeah,
so increasing the limited number is the best thing you can do.
yeah, we've already kind of covered off collective labour, and I think it's a
Mhm.
safe choice. Definitely one to go for if you can't really make a choice.
Yeah.
Marksman's interesting. Dispersion versus rudder shift.
I
Maybe,
don't care for it.
yeah, maybe. Volunteer. The reason why we think it's quite a poor one is it basically reduces the duration of it. So that's how long the damage control party will be active for. Yes, you get another charge of it, and it does reduce the reload, but it just like that reduction
It's
in
just
reload doesn't actually seem to be like justifiable.
no, it's not. It's not worth it. I mean, I haven't upgraded him, but it says at rank 8 it will be a -6% on the reload time, and I mean, I'm not sure
Wow.
on the exact reload time anyway, but I can't see it 6% being any more than what, like 10 seconds maybe.
It's a 40-second reload.
Oh well, there you go
So
then. I mean, what's 6%? That's barely anything to care about, really.
yeah, but the thing is, it only lasts for 11 seconds. So by reducing the how long it's on for, it's only going to be like a 5 second duration. So you're only going to be
Yeah,
immune to enemy fires and flooding for 5 seconds. I mean,
no, it's
because
useless.
because
Don't bother.
because the trick with damage con sometimes is okay, someone set 3 fires on you, actually let them burn until just before their shells hit you from the next volley, and then activate it, and then you just guarantee you're not going to catch fire.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good shout. But you wouldn't be doing that with volunteer. Just don't even bother. Don't even
Yeah,
consider it. Go for collective labour.
yeah, definitely,
It'd be the best
definitely.
choice.
For the
Um,
fourth ability, we have Reaching Out XXL, which basically increases the range of your main battery, versus Emergency Specialist, which increases the reload time, reduces the duration. So basically, that's
I
is
guess
it
it's
volunteer? That's
volunteer
basically
again.
volunteer without the increased damage control party.
So what I want to know is if you were to go for volunteer and emergency specialist, how long would it actually last? Like 2 seconds?
Oh God, it'd be minus 80%. So yeah, like maybe 3 seconds. Yeah, it'd be
Oh God,
useless.
I
Just
really I hope no one's done that.
don't do it. And if you have, send us a video. I want to see this 2 second damage control party. Just done.
Yeah, comment down below if you've gone for volunteer and
Yeah.
emergency
Was it?
specialist. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We won't make fun of you, but we will catch you on fire.
I might have to make a video about that. That'd be brilliant. Just watch it. Done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
So
useless.
yeah, definitely. I think we both agreed going for reaching out XXL.
Hmm.
Legendary ability. We've got Will to Rebuild, which improves the amount of HP recovered, versus Farsight. Farsight basically increases detectability of torpedoes but reduces the number of repair parties you have. But being you only come
It's
with two,
pointless.
and he's got no ability to get another one, you're actually only down to one repair party.
Yeah, useless. Don't even consider that. Go for Will to Rebuild, and not because it gives you a HP recovered buff, just because it doesn't take away a repair party charge.
Yeah, no, agreed. So moving on to I think our preference and also the reward of the last campaign, we have Mikhail Kedrov,
Yeah,
who
he's
has
definitely the one I use.
he's got my moustache as well. I quite like it.
Yeah, we do mention in our private lives that this looks quite like the Major. So if you ever come around to having a face reveal ever, have Kedrov in mind.
Uh, if we ever set up a Patreon, the first thing we might do is see if we can fund me that suit.
Yeah, what are you talking about? You already have one.
So his base ability, Vicious Circles, improving the traverse speed of the main batteries, turrets.
Always
It's a
useful.
good base ability.
Yeah, it's nothing wrong with it. You always want quicker guns, quicker
Yeah,
traverse speed.
definitely. Um, some first abilities. We've got not one for nuisance. We've already said why we'd pick that one. That's
Yeah, go for
versus Brawler. Brawler increases detected torpedo detectability torpedo, reload speed of your main battery, but reduces the range of your main guns. I usually only go for brawler if you are going for a brawler build. Like you're going, you know you're going to be going in, so range doesn't matter, and like you're going for like a secondary build. But being the Russians aren't that good at secondary builds, I kind of feel like I wouldn't bother going for this one.
No, go for not the one for Neeson's.
I think that then stacks with why, like for the next one, we've both gone for crisscross, because like we said with his basic trait, we want improved traverse speed is good, versus that against the secondary stuff. The secondaries aren't that great, so like we're not making these as brawlers, so that's why we both agree on crisscross again. I think.
Yeah, I mean the thing I always find with secondaries is although they can be very very useful in certain situations, I've never really got to a point where I've gone, oh, I wish my secondaries were just a tad bit more precise. I kind of see them as like they're so sporadic and random anyway that like you could buff the precision of them, but I've never done that on
I
any of my
think the main
commanders.
one there is the precision and dispersion, and then it's the range of them as well.
Yeah, the
Um,
range is yeah, obviously the range is the thing you're looking for, isn't it? But
yeah,
it's
as long as you've got, I think my rule of thumb on my British is if you've got a secondary gun armament of 6-inch high explosive guns, I'd go for it because 6-inch high explosive does pack a punch. Once the caliber of your secondaries reduces below 6-inch or doesn't actually fire high explosives, then I wouldn't bother with it because AP just bounces and 4.7, 4.9-inch guns just don't pack the kind of punch against a destroyer. Because like with my Warspite, she's got 6-inch secondaries, and when they hit, they can like knock out destroyers' engines and things like that, and and they can have a good fire chance. But with the
yeah,
Russians, I don't think the
no,
the range on them base isn't that great, and then you haven't got the kind of like numbers and stuff.
yeah, they're not HE, they're not secondary builds,
Mm.
secondary ships, sorry. But yeah, onto the third. Onto the third trait. I believe this is the exact same as Galler by the looking at it now, and we're not going to go for it again. Just go for collective labour. Don't look back.
Yeah, I think the only one that's different is firefighter, which is reduce the reload, reduce the chance of catching fire, but then again reduce the duration of it by 30%.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not for these kind of ships. Just
yeah,
don't. I,
just
I wouldn't go for it.
just get the extra one, isn't it?
Yeah. And then so reaching out XXL for the fourth trait, which increases your main battery's range, which is obviously always good. But I would personally go for Master Mechanic over that because again, a repair party charge and a repair party charge is always nice.
Yeah,
So it
definitely.
allows you to gain another set percent of your battleship's health again, and it also increases the amount of HP recovered and reduces the reload time. So those are a lot of positives versus just a small buff on the range.
Yeah, but the other one is with Master Mechanic, you're gonna have to get the mastery level up to level 3, which is gonna take you literally ranking Kedrov all the way up to rank 16. But if you can do that, you will get 2 repair parties or 2 more, so that would take your repair party now total up to 4.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider if you are going for a Kedrov build. Get him
Yeah,
to 16 if you want, if you can. Sorry.
if you're playing the Russians a lot and you're basically invested into it and you go, yeah, these are the ships I want to play, then that's basically where you're going to be looking at, like ranking them all the way up to get that additional repair party.
Yeah, I definitely go for that. Do you want to do the legendary?
Yeah, so legendary ability, will to rebuild improves the amount of HP recovered. I think that's what you've gone for, and it is a safe choice. Um, Running with scissors increases the dispersion of your main battery, but improves your traverse speed of your guns and also reduces your rotor shift. Now I've gone for that because of my kitey play style. Again, it stacks with the turret traverse base trait and the turret traverse second ability.
Hmm.
which means turrets are getting really quick now. And then also the rudder shift means that you can kind of just kite in and out and bring those rear turrets in and then tuck them back in, so you're not standing broad or wide against an enemy battleship for too long. It's a playstyle thing, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely down to playstyle. I mean, it's because of the difference in playstyle. I'm not massively worried about the rudder shift and the traverse speeds buff that you gain from it because of the reduction in dispersion and I the increase in dispersion. Sorry, and I mean I don't like anything that makes my shots less accurate normally.
That's fair enough.
um, so I just go for the wheel to rebuild because it's just a nice small buff, isn't it?
Um, shall we move on to inspirations? So
Yeah. Do you want to do your inspirations,
yeah,
then I'll do mine?
I'll do mine first. So I've gone for Cunningham, which improves the precision of the main battery. So I guess you kind of say that kind of counters the dispersion issue with running with scissors, but also just means I'm probably going to be getting more shells on target. Fingers crossed. And then I've gone
Hmm.
for Kondo. That's simply just because of my playstyle of having that kind of concealment on battleships. What about yourself?
I've gone for Sims because I always go for Sims on most ships, which just gives you a extra health build basically, and
Yeah,
I recommend it on any ship personally because I like having more health. But that comes down to whether you want a variation from that on battleships. And I've gone for Otto Ciliax, or just Otto Climax as we call him, who increases AP shell damage of your battleship. And I find myself staying in AP a lot of the time with the Russian battleships,
yeah,
and if I can increase the AP shell damage, then that's going to basically be a buff on every salvo I fire. Um,
yeah.
I see it as useful.
Yeah, it's quite amusing actually between our two playing styles. Yours is about being able to take the hits and being able to dish the hits out, like damage wise, whereas mine's about not being seen so I don't have to take the hits and also then having the maneuverability to avoid the hits.
Yeah,
Quite amusing, like just looking over it.
yeah, it is actually quite. It's quite interesting because yeah, I go for health and power, and you go for um, like detectability and maneuverability.
Mm,
It's interesting actually. I've never really looked. I've never sort of broken it down to that. But yeah, it is interesting. I just like. I always like having more health, and I like my shots landing and like packing more of a punch. Really, I
yeah.
like those moments where you deck chair things.
Oh yeah. You definitely do. I
Yeah, I
think
live for
that
that.
pretty much wraps it up. I think both of us would recommend Kedrov.
Yeah, definitely. That's who I use.
So, if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. I'm the Gavin Major.
And I'm Maggie Harris, and back to the port.